or we can say that they have some common properties and behaviors. So in programming world, like we create those common characteristic, we keep those common characteristics and behavior in the parent class, or we can call it as a base class. Based on that base class, we can create derived class, or sometime it is called a superclass and subclass, or parent class and child class. So same meaning or different terminology: base class, derived class, parent class, child class, or superclass and subclass. We can, so this also, inheritance also allows to uh, reuse our code. We don't have to implement the same code which could be placed into a base class or a parent class. So all the common functionalities, all the common characteristics can be kept into the parent class, and all the child classes will derive those or inherit those characteristics and behavior from the parent class. And this is how we achieve code reusability as well with inheritance. The fourth one is polymorphism. Poly means many and morph means form. So it simply means multiple forms or many forms. Polymorphism means multiple forms. So in programming world, we achieve this by two ways. There is a method overloading, and there is a method overriding. So uh, if you take the example of bank account again, so in a normal saving account, you're allowed to withdraw only that much of money. Okay, so this withdraw and balance are coming from the parent. We define them in the base class. Then coming into the saving account, we can keep the implementation same, or we can change the behavior of the withdrawal method. Like when we are withdrawing, let's think of the logical step that proceeds in a withdrawal process. So the withdrawal process, whenever a user goes for the withdrawal, the first thing that we check is what is the withdrawal amount. Then we check whether the user have that many balance in his account or not. If yes, then we proceed with the next step. If not, we decline the withdrawal request, that you don't have sufficient money in your account. This will be a normal process. And for the saving account, this normal process will be followed as it is. As it is follow जाएगा. तो जब कस्टमर रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा है कि गिव मी 5,000 rupees from my account, and if the account holds less than 5,000 rupees, then the request will be declined. And if it will have more than 5,000, then the request will be accepted and proceed further. The next step will be to give out the 5,000 rupees to the customer and minus, or basically subtract, the 5,000 from the current balance, and then update the balance in the bank account. So let's say the customer have 8,000 rupees in his account, and he withdrew 5,000 out of it. So the 5,000 rupees will be provided to the customer, and it will be deducted from his balance, and the remaining balance in his account will be 3,000 now. So this will be the process for the saving account. However, if we apply it to, and probably in saving account, it would be checking for number of transactions as well. Let's say like only 5 transactions are allowed per month as a free transaction. If he did more than 5 transactions in that period, then we would be charging some amount for the transaction as well. Let's say 5 rupees per transaction. So if it's his sixth transaction in the month, then we would be charging 5 rupees extra. So the balance will be 2,995 rupees. Okay, so the same withdrawal method will be available in current account as well. However, the current account does not attract any transaction charges even if you are doing more than 5 transactions per month. So this behavior need to be changed. So to do that, we usually follow the base method, the base behavior in our base class, and then we use the same name of the method in the subclass or the derived class, and we override the behavior of it. Okay, so the behavior for withdrawal method would be different in a saving account, it would be different in a current account, and it would be different in a overdraft account, which basically allows you to overdraft. So even if you don't have 5,000 rupees, and if you request for that, it will allow you to do so, and will it will basically keep your balance into the minus, and which depicts or which denotes that your account is in minus. You overdrew the money from your account. So the same behavior but different implication, different implementation. So this is called method overriding. So when we are overriding or basically providing a different behavior to a method which was defined in the parent, and now it has a different implementation in a child class. So this is called as a method overriding. The second is method overloading. Method overloading says that you can use the same name for the method, but you can have different declaration, different definition for it. Let's say uh, we take the withdrawal method only. So one could be one method would only take single parameter, which is the amount that you want to withdraw. Okay, another variation could be with withdrawal amount, you may have something additional attached to it. Okay, we may want to handle something additional. So for that, we want to use the same name withdrawal, but we need extra parameter there. So this is called, here we are having a single name, single method name, but multiple definition for it, multiple ways to call that method. Okay, so this is called polymorphism in hoops. Next is what is Git. So before we understand what is Git, let's put forth एक प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट, एक प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट हम सामने रखते हैं. So let's say you are a writer and you are writing an article. You are using copy pen simply. You are using a notepad, we can say, and एक pen. हम लोग एक notepad एक article लिखना है, एक writer है, and he wants to write or she wants to write an article, and for that he or she is using a notepad and a pen. So the chances are you won't come up with a final version in the first attempt. In the first attempt, uh, he or she will write something. It will be good on certain points, or it might not be good on other points. So it will be a draft only. Then we we write another article. We write another article. Basically, the different version of same article, and ultimately we reach to the final version that is looks good to us and it is ready to be published. So a single article is going through multiple stages, multiple versions, multiple draft version we can say, or like maybe semi-finalized version we can say, and ultimately it reaches to the final version that we can publish. However, in this process, like let's say we are writing on a paper and we discard all the in-between drafts. We discarded all the in-between drafts, but uh, we get the need to read some context or read some point from a previous draft. That point was very uh, important, and it's like it was coming up, it came up very good in that particular draft, and we need that in our final draft. However, now the draft is gone because we discarded all the papers. There is a problem. Okay, that is the problem when you're working on um, let's take it this way. So when you're working in any industry, it doesn't matter like whether you're a writer, a normal writer, a book writer, a novel writer, uh, an article writer, या फिर आप एक प्रोग्रामर हो. So हम लोग different versions create करते हैं before we reach to our final version. और it could be possible that हम लोगों के final version बनने के बाद we need to make some amendments in that. हम लोगों को कुछ modification करना है उस version में, and we need to come up with a better version. हम लोगों को उसमें कुछ add करना है, कुछ remove करना है, but still we need to maintain the old copy of it. So either way, like we should keep a backup of it, we should not discard it. There could be one way, and only in that case we can go back and check it. That is the only way. So basically, this represents a big problem, especially when you're working in a programming, or when you're working on a project, when you're coding, when you're programming. It's not related or not limited to only programming. This can be applied to other fields as well. But let's try to understand from a programming perspective. So we are working on a project. Project में हम लोगों को कुछ features create करने हैं. So we created those features, and they are published. वो final हो गए. They are published now. Now we got a bug into that, और हम लोगों को उसमें कुछ फीचर एडिशन करना है, कुछ नए फीचर ऐड करना है, या फिर एग्जिस्टिंग फीचर को हम लोगों को इम्प्रूव करना है. सो वी डेफिनेटली नीड द ओल्डर वर्जन present, and then upon which we can make further improvements. But it could happen that after moving forward, the feature is not working, the new feature is not working, it's not connecting with the users, connecting with the end user. We want to discard it. Now, in order to discard those code, we need to do it manually. हम लोगों को एक एक लाइन रीड करके, it's like we need to take out the points, take out the lines of code which is not required, which is related to the new features. Okay, that is a manual process. That is again a problem statement there. So in programming world, it happened a lot, and to solve this, we have a tool, and that tool is known as Git. Git is a version control system. It's a simple version control system, and it is a distributed version control system, which means the same copy of a project can be available with me and someone else as well working in my team. So it is distributed. People can work, or programmers can work, developers can work on their own copy, and then they can later on merge it. They can later on collaborate it. They can combine it together. Okay? So Git is a version control system, or more precisely, a distributed version control system, which help us in tracking the different versions of our program, of our project over the period of time. Right? So how does Git manages that? So uh, if you work with Windows operating system, and basically initially, like I'm not sure about now, but initially when we work with Windows and Windows XP version, so whenever we install a new software into the Windows, it creates a checkpoint. It creates a checkpoint in uh, the system, and the checkpoint basically represents the current state of the operating system at that point of time, before installing and after installing, we can say. After installing, it creates a checkpoint. So every time we install a software, it creates a new checkpoint based on the current state of the operating system. And there was a facility available using which we can go back to a previous checkpoint, and we can restore our operating system to that point. Right? So Git does something similar. So it creates checkpoint throughout the time frame. Okay, and these checkpoints are known as commits in Git. So let's say हम लोगों ने एक project पे work करना start किया. We started working on a project, and then in that project we created a few files, and it looks good. We think that it's working logically, it's working technically, there's no harm. We reach a certain logical point, and at that point we can create a commit, and those files, basically the state of our project, will be saved at that point of time. हम लोगों के फोल्डर्स में उस वक्त जो जो फाइल्स क्रिएटेड होगी, उन फाइल्स में जो जो कोड लिखा होगा, that will be stored by the Git. We can think like as a snapshot. एक पिक्चर उसने स्टोर कर लिया कि at this point of time, at this point of commit, ये फाइल्स अवेलेबल थी, एंड इन दोज फाइल्स इतना कंटेंट अवेलेबल था. So this is how Git creates commit, and like the developer can create multiple such commits in the Git, like during his work, and those all commits work as a checkpoint, and act as a different version of the same project at different point of time, right? Then what are some basic Git, like how we can deal with Git? What are some basic commands that we can use with Git? Okay, so before we understand the working of Git commands, like what are the common Git commands और वो कैसे वर्क करती है, हम लोग दो चीज़ें समझते हैं उससे पहले, एंड दैट इज द वर्किंग एरिया एंड स्टेजिंग एरिया. सो बेसिकली जब हम गिट के साथ काम करते हैं तो हम लोगों को दो एरियाज मिलते हैं. एक होता है वर्किंग एरिया और एक होता है स्टेजिंग एरिया. सो जब हम लोग फाइल्स पे वर्क करते हैं, व्हेन यू आर क्रिएटिंग अ न्यू फाइल, डिलीटिंग अ फाइल, मॉडिफाइंग अ फाइल कंटेंट, सो वो सारी फाइल्स जो हम लोग क्रिएट कर रहे हैं, डिलीट कर रहे हैं या मॉडिफाई कर रहे हैं, दैट आर प्रेजेंट इन अ एरिया एंड दैट एरिया इज नोन एज वर्किंग एरिया. हम लोग उसको वर्किंग एरिया बोलते हैं. और फिर जब हम लोगों का वर्क कंप्लीट हो जाता है, व्हेन वी रीच टू अ सर्टेन लॉजिकल पॉइंट इन आवर वर्क, then we move those working files into the staging area. Staging area is in, we can say that's like this is working area and this is staging area. So once the files are created and it's like done logically, we can move the files from here to here. Okay, the area is changed now. The files are moved from the working area to the staging area, and from that staging area, like we can create a commit. So whenever we create a commit, it is depending on the staging area. Whatever the files are present in the staging area are considered for the commit. Okay, so how to work with these two things? So working with working area is quite simple. It's normal. It's a normal flow. हम लोग file create कर सकते हैं, delete कर सकते हैं, update कर सकते हैं. That is a normal flow. So all those file will be there in the working area. Once हम लोगों की files complete हो जाती है, we reach a logical point in our files, in our program. We created a feature, we fixed a bug, और हम लोगों ने फीचर एनहांसमेंट कर लिया है, एक सर्टेन लॉजिकल पॉइंट रीच कर लिया है, then we can use git add command. We can use git add command for that. So git add command help us in moving the files from the staging area, moving the files from the working area to the staging area. And once the files are moved to the staging area, we can use git commit. So git commit works on all the staging files. The files which are present in the staging area will be considered. Only those files will be considered for the commit purpose. जो working area में file रहेगी, they will remain as it is. They won't be considered for the commit. Only the staging files get considered for the commit. Alright. Then there is a git pull. सो हम लोग जब गिट के साथ काम करते हैं तो गिट रिपोजिटरीज बनाते हैं. Okay, to understand git repository, we can think of it is a folder created by git to maintain all its related files. Basically जैसे हम लोग अपने ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम पे फाइल्स बनाते हैं, लेट्स से आप we are creating a project, and for that project we have a bunch of files. Let's say we are creating an express application, so in that express application we'll be having index.js file or server.js file. Then we have routes folder, then we have controllers folder, then we have models folder. So uh, our project folder will be, let's say, books management. So that will be our root folder, inside which we have controllers folder, models folder, routes folder, and index.js file, package.json file. So all those files are available inside the books management. So books management is a logical unit inside which all our express project related files are present and folders are present. Similarly, जब Git version control करता है, तो it creates its own folder called .git. It's hidden usually .git, and inside that folder it keeps all the information related to the versions, different versions that we are creating, different commits that we have created in the Git, and this is known as the Git repository. Okay, और जो folder create करते हैं, we can think of it as a Git repository. Git repository can be considered as a logical unit created by the Git to maintain the different versions of the same code, different uh, characters, different methods, different behaviors related to the project. वो सारी चीज़ें Git store करके रखता है, and to track that, to use a Git, we need a repository, Git repository, right? So it's a programming paradigm that exists in the programming world. There are more programming paradigm like functional programming, which is gaining popularity in current time. OOPS programming or object-oriented programming paradigm is present in the programming world for quite a lot year, and a lot of languages, a lot of programming languages support OOPS concept or OOPS programming paradigm like Java, C++, JavaScript, PHP, Python, and many more. Many more languages support OOPS programming paradigm. So what is OOPS and what we do in that? So OOPS or object-oriented programming, basically, as the name suggests, they are dealing in the objects. And what are objects? So we can, uh, the objects are the result of classes. Then the question would be, what is classes or what are classes, right? So in object-oriented programming, we map the real-world entities in a form of a class, and to work with those classes, we create instances or we create objects of those classes. Like in real world, let's say, like try to understand like what is a class and what is a object. So in real world, we create a map. Let's say we are creating a multi-story building. So we create a blueprint of it. We create a map of it. We call it a blueprint. Like we design like what is going to be, it's like how many floors will be there in that building, what will be the plan, what will be the structure of an individual flat or individual floor in that building. So we create a map for that. We call it as a blueprint. And based on that blueprint, we create multiple units of it. Or we can think of like we are creating multiple row houses and all the row houses will be same. So we create a map for it. That map is called as the blueprint. And then based on that blueprint, based on that map, we create multiple row houses, multiple units based on that. So here the blueprint, the map can be considered as a class, and their resultant objects are the units, the multiple units of the same class. Right? So classes help us in mapping the real world entities in the form of a class. We create a blueprint of real world entities using a class by giving them some, like every real world entity has some characteristics. Like if you take the example of a car. So a car has four wheels, one steering, one horn, one accelerator, one brake, one clutch, one gearbox, etc., one engine, etc. So these are all characteristics, these are all properties of a car. And then there's some behavior related to a car, like the car can accelerate, the car can stop, the car can honk, the car can uh, take a reverse, like go into the forward direction, or it can go into the backward direction. So that is a real world entity. We can map that into a class, and all the characteristics of a car can be mapped as a member variables of that class. And we need to provide behavior. So behavior, so when we are saying that the car is moving in a forward direction or in a backward direction, so basically we can say that the car is moving, car is accelerating, so it is related to the accelerate button. We are stopping the car. So stopping is a mechanism, it's a behavior of a car, and we achieve that behavior by changing its method, is changing its property, which is applying the brakes. So all the real world entity get some characteristics, have some characteristics and some behavior related to it. Again, if we take an example, let's take another example of a human. So a human has two legs, two ears, two hands, two eyes, one nose, one mouth. So all these are characteristics. These are some characteristics of a human being. And what are the behaviors? So a human can walk, a human can talk, a human can hear. So these are some behavior related to a human, and they are related to. So when we are saying walking, so he's using his legs. When we are saying that he's talking, or the human is talking, then he's using his mouth. So there are some characteristics related to a real world entity, and there are some behavior related to those properties, related to those characteristics. Similarly, when we create a class which helps us in mapping a real world entity in a programming language using some code. So class is the basic structure, the basic building block of that. So in class, we define all the characteristic using the member variables. Like we can say, like if we take the example of JavaScript language, then it will be creating a class, let's say, and the class name, let's say, human. And so a human will have some characteristics like leg, he'll have hand, mouth, etc. So this could be some of the properties of a human being. So these are called the member variables. The characteristics are called as member variables in a programming language. It could differ language to language, but normally in general we can say them. They are the characteristics of a class, or we can say they are the member variable of the class. Then the behaviors can be mapped using methods. Methods are simply functions defined inside a class, and those functions have access to all the properties, all the member variables defined in that class, and other behavior defined in that class. Like we can define walk, talk. So this could be some behavior inside a class. So this is how essentially a class look like. It will have certain characteristics present as a member variable, and it will have certain behavior mapped as a functions, or we call them methods. Functions which are generally defined inside a class are known as methods. So this is how we map a real world entity into a class, which we can say it is a blueprint, a prototype using which we can create multiple units of the same class, but with different member variable, with different characteristics, okay, with different behavior. Then in OOPS, there are four core pillars, or we can say there are four core concepts of OOPS. So any programming language that implements OOP, or that provides the OOPS paradigm, it follows the four core pillars, or the four core concepts related to OOPS programming. Those are abstraction, abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. We'll talk about all four of them a little bit in brief. So again, let's take the example of car. So a human or a person is driving a car. So using accelerator, he can accelerate his car. He can speed up the car, and using the brake or applying the brake, he can slow down the car or can stop it. Okay. So a human only knows these two things. Like using the accelerator, he can speed up the car, and using brakes, he can slow down or stop the car. but he does not know the inner implementation of those, like how pressing a button is stopping the car or pressing a button speeding up the car, like how is it accelerating and how is it slowing down when we apply the brakes. So we don't know that. We know only the essentials here. The same thing is known as abstraction in programming. So we only expose things which are essential for the outer world to know and to operate with this class using objects. We don't have to expose the non-essential and the trivial things, like how the accelerator is working, how the brake are being applied. It's like we don't have to expose that thing. Let's take another example and like how it can be mapped, or it's like what could be the possible implementation in a programming language. So uh, in a bank we can open an account. It could be a saving account or a current account. Let's take current account. So related to current account, there are some certain things like the user details or the customer details, like for whom we are opening this account, the balance, like how much money he have in the bank account, and all the transaction related to it. Okay, so there are some properties and there are some behaviors. Like the balance is a property, is a characteristic of a saving account or a normal account, bank account. Then the behavior are withdrawal and deposit. Like the user can deposit the money and he can withdraw the money. So these are a couple of behaviors related to a bank account. The user is only interested in depositing some money and withdrawing some money and having a change and having the change in his balance, in his account balance. So if he deposits money, he expects his balance to go up, and if he's withdrawing the money, then it is expected for his balance to go down. It will be reduced. So that is the behavior related to an account. And a user, a customer only knows this two behavior. Like he does not know how they are performing the deposit internally, how they're performing the withdrawal internally, what else goes behind the scene. So a customer does not know that. So this is known as abstraction in OOPS programming. We hide away things which are non-essential or trivial for the customer or for the end user. We only expose what is required and which is essential for the outer world to know. Right? Second, encapsulation. It sounds a lot like abstraction, but there is a slight difference between them. Even encapsulation talks about keeping things hidden from the outer world, and it achieves using the access modifiers. Okay, access modifiers like public, protected, and private. So these are some access modifiers which can be found in most of the programming language which supports OOPS concept. So encapsulation is achieved using this access modifiers by applying this access modifier to the methods, to the member variables, or even to the um, yeah, so to the member variables or to the methods defined inside a class. So encapsulation talks about two things, two main things. The first is encapsulation means keeping all the things related as a single unit. So if we talk about the car or if we talk about the bank account again, so keeping all the information related to that account, like the user information for which the account is created, the balance information, the withdrawal and deposit behaviors, and what happens when we do those operations, when we perform those behaviors on a bank account. So all that information should be kept, all that data should be kept as a single unit. So that is the first part of encapsulation. And second is the data hiding. So using encapsulation, we also achieve data hiding. What is data hiding? So In a bank account, it is not allowed for the bank to expose the balance of a customer, of any customer. Anyone, any other customer should not know other person's account. Only the customer, the intended customer, or basically we can say the owner of the account can know the balance of his account. So the data is hidden, and also the implementation is also hidden. The user or the customer cannot directly change his balance. He can't go and directly change his balance. He can't just do it from 1000 to 2000 or from 2000 to 10,000. He can't directly go and change that because that is something sensitive and we can't allow anyone to change it directly. So that is achieved using the encapsulation and by applying access modifiers. Like we can keep it as a private, so it will be available and accessible only inside the class, and we allow it to change only through some operations like withdrawal and deposit, and those will be created as a public method which the outer world can access and can interact with the internal system using those public defined methods. So this is how we achieve data hiding using encapsulation in programming. The third is inheritance. So what is inheritance? If it understand inheritance with respect to ourselves only, or to any species, any animal out there. Let's take the example of human only. So when we are born, or let's say it's like whenever a human is born, it inherits, it gets some properties, characteristics from the parents, like a few child get their color from their mother, maybe their face look like their father, they get the height similar to their dad, and maybe their voice is related to their mom, something like that, right? So these are some characteristics and also behavior. So human gets its characteristics and behavior, certain characteristics and behavior from their parents, or it could be coming from their grandparent as well. Obviously, the proportion would be less, but it will be getting some characteristics and behavior from the parents or the grandparents. So this process is known generally in biological terms. We call it as an inheritance. We are we are inheriting things from our parents or from our grandparents. So the same concept is applied in programming as well. Like if we talk about car for an example, or if we talk about bank accounts again. So we could have a bank account. So all the bank accounts, irrespective of their type, will have some common characteristics and behavior. Like a bank account will have the balance. A bank account will have the facility to deposit and withdraw. So this will be some common characteristics and behavior of a bank account. So we can keep it as in like that will be a base class based on which we can create different subclasses like a saving account or a current account. This could be two different, or a overdraft account. So this could be different types of bank accounts we can have. And based on their type, they can get some additional behavior. Like a saving account attracts some interest. We get paid by bank by depositing some money or keeping some money into the bank saving account. Whereas the current account does not provides you with the interest. However, it does not charge you for number of transactions. Like you can perform uh, n number of transactions in a particular time frame, and the bank will allow it to you. Like the bank won't object or won't charge you for that. And where it comes to the overdraft, so again, like this is something like even if you don't have money, you can withdraw from it. It's like the bank is borrowing some money to you for a limited period of time. It's like allowing you to overdraft, overdraw. Okay, when we are withdrawing money, so even if you don't have enough money, you can withdraw that. and the bank is facilitating that withdrawal for you. So this could be different behaviors and characteristics of this different bank accounts, but they all are same internally, or we can say they have some common properties and behaviors. So in programming world, like we create those common characteristic, we keep those common characteristics, and we need changes from developer B, then we need to pull the changes. Basically, we need to fetch the changes from the developer B. So that fetching mechanism is called as or can be achieved using git pull method. So basically, it fetches the new commits from the repository into our repository. Then there is a git push, which is exactly opposite of git pull. So git pull help us in fetching the new changes, new commits, whereas git push help us in pushing the new commits. Okay, let's say developer A ने कुछ changes किए हैं, तो only uh, the commits are available with him as of now, and using git push he can share those commit with other people. Okay, now basically git pull and git push works when we have a local repository and a remote repository. So what is a local repository and what is a remote repository? Let's try to understand that as well. So local repository, very simply say, is a Git repository which is available only with us. Okay, जो हमारे पास available है सिर्फ. Or we can say that it's a copy of a repository that is available to us. So उसको हम local repository बोलते हैं. It is only available to us. It is not shared with other people. Or a remote repository is it available on a public system, जहाँ से हम लोग उस रिपोजिटरी को शेयर कर सकते हैं विद मल्टीपल डेवलपर्स. लाइक एक टीम में अगर 4 मेंबर वर्क कर रहे हैं तो वी कैन क्रिएट अ पब्लिक रिपोजिटरी, अ रिमोट रिपोजिटरी ऑन अ सर्वर ऑन अ पब्लिक प्लेस, और जहाँ से हम लोग उस रिपोजिटरी को सारे टीम मेंबर्स के साथ शेयर कर सकते हैं. So that is the concept of local repository, which is present on your local system, your local machine, and remote repository which is available on a public machine, जहाँ से हम लोग उसको शेयर कर सकते हैं, डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर सकते हैं टू मल्टीपल टीम मेंबर्स. तो git pull help us in fetching all the new commits from that remote repository into a local repository, and git push help us in pushing all our local commits to that remote repository or to that public repository. What is a Git repository in branches? So as I explained, repository can be considered like Git repository is like your file system folder under version control. It is a working space for your project, right? So like I mentioned, like I explained, जब हम लोग एक project, एक express project create किया, तो उसमें कुछ folders बनाते हैं, कुछ files बनाते हैं, and to make it like to version control that, हम लोगों को उस project को version control करना है using Git, तो उसके लिए हम लोगों को Git repository बनानी पड़ती है. And when we create it, when we turn it into a Git repository, Git creates a folder called .git inside that folder, and through that folder it maintains all the data related to the repository. कितने commits हुए हैं, किसने commit किया है, किस वक्त commit किया है, and what was the history, what were the files present at that point of time, what were the content present at that point of time. So all this information is kept using a Git repository. फिर Git repository जब बनाते हैं तो Git repository comes with branches. Okay, so branches can be considered like एक tree होता है, तो ट्री में एक मेन ट्रंक होता है, तना होता है, जो कि एक मेन तना होता है, like which is the main one, like which coming from the root level, and from the main trunk we can have multiple branches can have their own trajectory. So similarly git में भी जब हम लोग repository बनाते हैं तो it comes with a main branch. The main branch normally comes termed as a master branch or main branch only. So apart from that main branch, master branch, we can create multiple branches, and those branches can be considered as a copy of the main branch. Like they will have all the content from the main branch. Let's say we have one, two, three commits in our main branch, and from after that, after having three commits in our main branch, we create a separate branch. Let's say branch A. So this branch A will have all the changes from the main branch, from the three commits that the main branch have, and after that it can have its own commits. So it will be considered as a copy, or like a copy from a certain point of time, and then it can proceed in its own trajectory. Why the branches are needed? The question would be, branches तो हम लोगों ने समझ लिया कि it's like a copy of the main branch, or it could be a copy of the other branches as well. Like after creating a copy from the main branch, like branch A, we can create branch A2 from branch A, or branch B from the branch A. Okay, so here the branch A will be uh, the source or the origin for the branch B. तो हम लोग इस तरह से मल्टीपल ब्रांचेस क्रिएट कर सकते हैं इनसाइड अ गिट रिपोजिटरी. अब व्हाई डू वी नीड ब्रांचेस? ओके, तो उसको समझने के लिए हम लोग प्रोजेक्ट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन समझते हैं. हाउ अ प्रोग्राम और अ प्रोजेक्ट गोज थ्रू सर्टेन लाइफ साइकिल्स. तो प्रोजेक्ट जब हम लोग बनाते हैं तो इट इज स्टार्टेड, फिर हम लोग कोई फीचर बनाते हैं, टेस्ट होता है, डिप्लॉय होता है, मतलब वो पब्लिक को, जनरल पब्लिक को यूज़ के लिए अवेलेबल होता है. Then after that we found some bug, we need some more features. ठीक है. Now there are two ways to do it. या तो हम लोग जो मेन ब्रांच है उसी पे वर्क करते रहें, बट अगर कुछ बग ऐसा आ गया है, let's say we started working on the main branch, we are creating a new feature into that, but it is not yet ready, and a bug was identified. It's a very critical bug, and we need to fix it as soon as possible. But now we have an incomplete feature, and if we make the bug fixing with that incomplete feature, then the incomplete feature will also be go to the deployment, वो भी public हो जाएगा, which we don't want to do at this point of time. और वो feature complete करने में भी बहुत समय लगेगा, और हम लोगों को bugs अभी ही fix करना है. So in those cases, like, the branches help us a lot. To create a new feature, we don't have to work on the main branch directly. We can create a clone of it, we can create a copy of it as a branch, and we can create that new feature into that branch. And अगर कोई बग फिक्स आता है तो हम लोग डायरेक्टली मेन ब्रांच में वो बग फिक्स करके हम लोग डिप्लॉय कर सकते हैं, एंड द न्यू फीचर इज इन सेपरेट ब्रांच. और जब वो सेपरेट ब्रांच कंप्लीट हो जाती है, वो फीचर कंप्लीट हो जाता है, वी कैन combine the changes from this feature branch into the main branch, and then we can deploy it on the public server. So that's how the branches help us in achieving a more sophisticated working mechanism in a project life cycle, project development life cycle. Then, what is the difference between Git and GitHub? Okay, so Git, as we learned before, is a version control system. Git is a distributed version control system using which we can track the changes in a project, and it tracks changes by creating a Git repository. Okay, so Git basically a tool which help us in creating Git repository. It provides all the Git related commands, and through which we can version control our project. And GitHub, on the other hand, is a platform where we can host, हम लोग जहाँ पे अपनी repositories को deploy कर सकते हैं. So GitHub is a platform where we can place our repository, and through that platform we can share the repository with our team members. Okay, and GitHub is not the only such platform. Apart from GitHub, we have GitLab, we have Bitbucket. These are two more prominent platforms which provides the functionality to host a Git repository in a public server जहाँ से हम लोग उस Git repository को share कर सकते हैं to our team members. And the concept of remote repository, like basically the repository that is created on a GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab is termed as a remote repository. And we can clone this, we can copy this repository to our system, and that repository is known as local repository. Simple. What is, next question is, what is class ID in HTML and what is DOM? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about HTML first. So HTML or hypertext markup language. So HTML is a markup language using which we can create web pages. The HTML help us in creating the content. It helps us in placing the content into a web page. We can display some images, we can display some text content in a web page. So HTML provides that markup. It provides that markup by providing, or basically it provides some elements or tags. Okay, and using these elements or tags we can create markup. The tags are like div, p tag or paragraph tag, a tag or anchor tag, span tag, main tag, nav tag, sidebar, outside aside tag, footer tag, header tag. So these are some tags or some elements that are provided by HTML. And using these tags, we can create a markup. We can create a markup for our HTML page. And using this markup, we can basically create some content, display some content in the web page. Now, if we need to provide certain additional behavior to this markup, to this text, all the HTML tags or elements support some attributes. Like we can provide some certain additional attributes to a element. So class and ID are such attributes, are such two attributes. There's a lot of different attributes, but class and ID are the most commonly used attributes associated with an element. They can be used with all the HTML elements. The significant difference between class and ID is the name. Class is like class name is a string. Like it could be any valid string like container, btn or button. So these are some example of class names. And the basic difference or the main difference between a class and ID is in a the class can be used multiple times in a single HTML page. It can be repeated. We can use the same class name multiple times with different elements in our HTML page. Whereas the ID is unique for a single HTML page. It has to be unique. So for a single, let's say we have two pages, home.html and about.html. So class name can appear, single class name can appear multiple times in home.html and it can also appear in about.html multiple times. Whereas ID, let's say we have an ID called home. So home as an ID can appear in home.html only once. And if we try to repeat it, basically it's a invalid usage of ID. The ID should be unique throughout the HTML page. However, we can have the same ID in another HTML. Like if you have about.html, so about.html can also have home as an ID. So that is the basic difference, the fundamental difference between class and ID. Then what is DOM? The next question is what is DOM? So DOM is basically document object mapping. So essentially uh, when a web page is loaded into a browser, जैसे क्रोम हो गया या फिर एच हो गया या सफारी हो गया जो कि डिफरेंट ब्राउजर्स है, मोजिला फायरफॉक्स हो गया जो कि डिफरेंट ब्राउजर्स है. सो वेन एवर अ ब्राउजर रेंडर्स अ पेज, एक HTML पेज को रीड करके लोड करता है, डिस्क्रिप्ट लाइक after that we can see it. Once the page is loaded into the browser, Only after that we can see it. We can see the content present in it. So in that process, the browser creates a mapping, a tree-like structure of all the elements present in the HTML page. जैसे HTML पेज में हम लोगों के हेड टैग है, बॉडी टैग है, बॉडी के अंदर हम लोगों ने हेडर बनाया है, मेन बनाया है, फुटर बनाया है, असाइड बनाया है, मल्टीपल divs है, एंकर टैग्स है, नेविगेशन है, all those things are present in our HTML पेज. तो ब्राउज़र उस पूरे स्ट्रक्चर का एक ट्री लाइक मैप बनाता है और वो स्टोर कर देता है, वो स्टोर करके रखता है अपने पास. And using that tree like structure we can access the element. Okay, so DOM is essentially the document object mapping. Object as in tree like structure. तो पूरे HTML पेज को एक ट्री लाइक स्ट्रक्चर में मैप कर देना, that is commonly known as DOM. And using this DOM we can manipulate the HTML. हम लोग जावास्क्रिप्ट यूज़ करके और डॉम को यूज़ करके हम लोग HTML को मॉडिफाई कर सकते हैं. हम लोग कुछ एलिमेंट को ऐड कर सकते हैं, डिलीट कर सकते हैं. वी कैन मॉडिफाई देयर बिहेवियर. हम लोग उसको कुछ न्यू स्टाइल दे सकते हैं, उसमें कुछ नया एट्रीब्यूट ऐड कर सकते हैं. सो वी कैन डू ऑल दोज ऑपरेशंस यूजिंग डॉम एंड जावास्क्रिप्ट. राइट, दैट्स ऑल. थैंक यू. Okay. And we need changes from developer B, then we need to pull the changes. Basically, we need to fetch the changes from the developer B. So that fetching mechanism is called as or can be achieved using git pull method. So basically, it fetches the new commits from the repository into our repository. Then there is a git push, which is exactly opposite of git pull. So git pull help us in fetching the new changes, new commits, whereas git push help us in pushing the new commits. Okay, let's say developer A ने कुछ changes किए हैं, तो only uh, the commits are available with him as of now, and using git push he can share those commit with other people.